Hey everybody, thanks for joining us on this CARE conversation. We are happy to bring you a casual, cool, courteous talk about politics today. Our two guests today, State Senator Zach Duckworth. He is a Republican. He's from the Lakeville District. And we have State Representative Emma Greenman, DFL, South Minneapolis. Thanks for coming back. Appreciate you guys being here.
Happy to be here.
All right, so the topic of this conversation is the RNC and the DNC. And sort of what was the aim of both of these conventions? Did they achieve their aim? And sort of how are you guys feeling coming out of it? And the first thing we wanted to do is just play a few sound bites of former President Trump speaking as the headliner of the convention, and then we'll talk about it.
I said to myself, wow, what was that? It can only be a bullet. And moved my right hand to my ear, brought it down. My hand was covered with blood. Democrats want to unify our country. They should drop these partisan witch hunts, which I have been going through for approximately 8 years. I make this pledge to the great people of America. I will end the devastating inflation crisis immediately, bring down interest rates, and lower the cost of energy. We will drill, baby, drill.
All right, so we just heard from Donald Trump. What'd you think of his messaging? Because it was an interesting speech. He started talking about the ear and the assassination attempt, and then he sort of went over into campaigning.
Interesting speech for sure, a little on the lengthier side,
Yeah.
but you know, it's been just a whirlwind in American politics in general when you go back even just a month or a month and a half. You talk about an attempted assassination attempt on a former president and the leading contender for the Republican Party.
Days before. It's like 5 days before he spoke.
Literally days before the RNC, and then he's up on stage speaking, still has the wound freshly wrapped, right? And so when you think about just the environment and the circumstance, it's kind of surreal. And I think one important thing to be mindful of regarding the RNC is Joe Biden was still the opponent at the time.
That's right.
So that was all framed, toward the current president and not who would become the eventual Democrat nominee, which is Vice President Harris.
Do you think that was a disadvantage for Republicans going first, and then obviously was strategic by the Democrats, but then switching the candidate, and now you have a sort of new momentum for the Democrats in their convention?
I think the timing of it, given what had happened, was probably almost unbelievable, really. But the fact that the Democrats did switch their candidate, I think, has been a disadvantage in hindsight. I think at the time it was the right call. Polls were showing that he was overperforming President Biden at the time. He had a lot of strength and momentum coming out of that RNC convention, which I think is why the Democrats chose to do what they did for very strategic purposes.
Do you think the RNC rallied undecided voters? Do you think it pulled and swayed folks that are sort of middle ground?
I think by focusing on the messaging that you heard in the clip, which was about inflation, the cost of living skyrocketing, the cost of people's utility bills, homeowners insurance, car insurance going through the roof, I think does speak to a lot of folks. And whether people out there are hardcore Republicans or Democrats or more likely in between, when you start talking about the impacts to their budgets and them trying to provide for their families and plan for their futures financially, I do think that speaks to folks.
Yeah. Representative, what did you think about it? I don't know if you watched much of it or not.
It was a long speech, and I agree with Senator Duckworth that it has been a whirlwind, and it's sort of hard to bring yourself back to that, and that was only a month ago or so. What I think was noticeable, and I think it's on brand, was what former President Trump's speech was about, was mostly about former President Trump. And that was both as he talked about the themes of his candidacy, and also when he talked about some of the issues that everyone's talking about. You heard it at the DNC and the RNC, whether it's keeping things affordable, whether it's issues around the country that people are hearing. What I heard was that sort of theme back to 2016, I alone can fix it. Not a lot of what we, either as his future administration or as the country, we're going to do about it.
It was an interesting speech, though, because I was anchoring that night and we listened through the whole thing before we went on the air. And what I noticed as a journalist was that he had this moment, right? It's an impeccable moment of empathy from the whole country because he almost was killed in that horrific, shooting. And he went up and he was reading the script, and for the first half of the speech, he seemed like a changed person. He said he was a changed person, and he thanked God and said it was, a miracle that he was still alive and all this. And then when he went off script for a while, then he kind of came back to that 2016 candidate, and you could hear him with the same old things, talking about the border and things that rallied people in 2016 and 2020. And you were like, okay, well, which one are we going to get? I don't know. So we'll still yet to be seen how that really affected him. But it was certainly a momentous time and probably the biggest speech he's ever given. Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk DNC for a second here. We'll wrap that up and we'll move on here. So here's some clips from Vice President Harris speaking at the DNC.
Our nation with this election has a precious, fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battles of the past, a chance to chart a new way forward. We were underestimated at practically every turn, but we never gave up, because the future is always worth fighting for. I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me.
So, okay, Representative, what was your take about her speech, wrapping up the DNC?
You know, I think, and I was in the room, I was at the DNC, but it was clear that Vice President Harris's speech was to the country, not just to that room. And it really was about moving forward. I mean, you saw that as the whole theme, but I think it was, as we think about the challenges we face and as we think about the opportunity of a stronger America and a better, a brighter America, she really told the story that I think a lot of Americans could see themselves in, and also a story about how we together protect our freedoms, how we together take on those issues of keeping our budgets affordable and other things.
I think it was in stark contrast, though, to the RNC, and the major sort of criticism to Harris is, while the Republicans are campaigning on things like issues that people deeply care about, like illegal immigration and inflation and the cost of things, it seemed like the main theme from Harris was not that guy, because that guy's dangerous, instead of those issues. Do you agree with that or no?
No, I actually don't agree with you. I think that was a lot of where Biden's campaign was. I think that's one of the reasons what you saw sort of with Biden is really, as it became clear, I think he wasn't bringing people towards him. It became about Trump. I think what you saw in the 4 nights of the DNC, but frankly what you've seen in the candidacy, is this conversation about that is moving past this just not him, that is moving towards the future. We will not go back is to a certain degree about those issues, about whether it's the reproductive freedom, whether it's gun violence, whether it's all of the things that folks are worried about. But you also heard about a future. And I think that if you listen to her speech, and if you listen to the speeches that that really was building towards, that's what you heard from Governor Walz as well, was about, even when we talked about the issues, right? What are we going to do about housing? We're going to build 3 million more houses. We're going to provide affordable subsidies for folks who can get into housing. That's a solution to a problem that people are really seeing. That's not about Donald Trump. Now, what I heard her say in that speech was, he's an unserious man, but his reelection would have serious consequences. And I think that's a pretty good parable for what folks are thinking right now about Trump's candidacy.
So, Senator Duckworth, did you watch it at all? Did you watch the speeches? Or?
So I was not in the room, but I did watch. Really? I watched every single day of it, because I feel it's important for me to know and understand the messaging that's coming from the other side. I take that very seriously.
Yeah. What'd you think?
So a couple of things. First and foremost, I think it's obvious there's criticism out there in regard to the vice president and making her policies known to the public and sitting down for an interview, which I think she's actually supposed to be doing today with CNN.
That's right.
But what's interesting is, for all the criticism of President Trump and his policies, she seems to copy and paste quite a few. Whether it's no tax on tips all of a sudden, whether it's coming out with the child care tax credit for folks, or whether it's actually securing the border, there are a lot of folks out there saying, wow, a lot of the policies that she's now sharing with folks, we heard Trump talking about months ago. And so I think that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the election. And also, I would say this, in the clip she talked about unity and bringing the country together. I don't think you accomplish that goal as successfully when one of your main talking points is the other side is weird. I've got a lot of great constituents and folks I represent. Some agree with me on a lot of stuff, some on just some stuff. And I can tell you, every one of them and their loved ones are amazing people. And simply brushing off a whole, voting block of the country and trying to convince folks that they're just simply weird is a little disingenuous, and I don't think is going to have the uniting effect that she's maybe trying to accomplish.
Yeah, some would say that that's where Hillary Clinton messed up too. She was calling people who supported Trump all deplorables, and a lot of people took that to heart. You may have a point there. Any rebuttal there?
Well, I just haven't seen a broad brush, right? I've heard both Governor Walz and Vice President Harris talk about these ideas, whether it's Project 2020, whether it's a lot of things, banning birth control, a national abortion ban, all of those things. And some of the vice presidential nominee, some of the stuff that J.D. Vance has said is weird. And I think labeling that weird is very different than, and I actually think that what you see both Governor Walz and Vice President Harris doing is speaking to the majority, speaking to voters and saying, we understand where you're at, we understand what the common sense things, whether you're worried about gun violence and what we're gonna do about that, keeping your kids safe, whether you're worried about rising prices and price gouging, we're gonna focus on that. I don't think it has the same ring as what you heard in 2016.
So, here's an interesting question follow-up to that, and this is something I really want to know, especially from you, is that some people, they love former President Trump for his strength, for his bombastic way of talking, for what's he going to say next. They like the entertainment value. They like his policies that he ran on immigration and immediately did something that, from a numbers standpoint, worked. Whether you agree with it or not, it brought the numbers down of people who were coming over the border. But there are plenty of Republicans that I have spoken to, and people like Adam Kinzinger, who spoke at the DNC. And he's like, I don't agree with a lot of you, but I'm conservative, and I think that this guy is dangerous. Some Republicans can't stand Donald Trump. Do you know people like this? Is that you? Are you seeing that in Lakeville? And what do you do about that? Because it's a fact.
It is a fact. I know plenty of people that have that sentiment. There are plenty of people who I've had conversations with that say, I've got issues regarding him when it comes to character, and I have a very serious issue with him when it comes to what happened on January 6th. And I think those are valid concerns, and I understand where people are coming from when they share those sentiments. But those very same people will often tell me, however, I agree with his policies way more than I agree with the policies of the other side. And I believe they'll be better for the future of our country, as well as for my family and for my loved ones. And because of that, I have a willingness to get behind supporting policies that I've seen him implement successfully in the past, even though I might have some disagreement with the man himself, which I think is an interesting place to be in. A couple of things. Project 2025 was mentioned earlier. I think folks have done a good job putting out there that that is not something that the president or his administration has created, endorsed, or is pushing.
There were 28 people that were
His
in
top
his
policy
staffers that
advisors
wrote it.
are
I'm not saying it's
writing
his
it.
thing, and he denied knowing about it and all that. Who knows?
I just think it's clear that if he puts his name on it, that changes. I don't think he has at this point.
Right. That's accurate.
Yeah, and when you look at other economic policies being touted by the vice president, a tax on unrealized capital gains would be devastating for people, for the economy, and for inflation. And when we talk about trying to impact the economy, supply and demand, and what's coined as price gouging, I think folks have to look at it a little bit more closely and realize what they'd actually be calling for and how that would negatively impact pricing in general and supply chains, before we would take a serious look at maybe implementing that as a policy across the country. And last but not least, his administration, or would-be administration, has said they have no plans to institute a federal ban on abortion. So I believe he has said many times he wants to leave that up to the states. We know what happened here in the state of Minnesota most recently. So to your point about making sure that people truly understand what's being discussed, I know those two are slated to have some debates. I'm sure that some of those policy disagreements and contrasts will shake out during that as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. This is an important question because people want to jump on a bandwagon or claim their side and defend, but how does a national election like this, because it's a very, very important one, affect our state government and our local government? In what ways do you see that happening regardless of who's elected? Whoever wants to go first.
I mean, I'm happy to start. As we are on the ballot this year, the House is on the ballot. Lucky Senate.
I'm on vacation right now.
Lucky
You're
Senate
Warriors,
is
right?
not. Yeah. You know, what I think is, it obviously affects the conversations we're having, but I've been on the doors all over, both in my district as well as in districts that we have competitive races in the House, the most competitive districts. And I think those are the places that we're having the conversations about whether it's, when we talk about price gouging, right? Like, what we know is that the monopoly power that is the sort of most extreme we've seen in the history of this country is having an impact, whether it's the price of eggs or the price of healthcare. Those are things that talking every day on the doors. People being able to make choices about their own lives, whether it's their reproductive freedom, whether it's who they love, those things are coming up all the time. And probably our voters too, in elections in Minnesota, people are talking about education. They're talking about clean water in some places. They're talking about the things that have their everyday lives. And I think the best candidates, Republicans or Democrats, are the ones who are able to speak to that, the ones who come from those communities and can do that. And I think regardless of what's happening at the national level, those conversations at the door to door, are the ones that will have the biggest impact.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is like, that's kind of what I was asking. Like, people really get all riled up about their presidential candidate, but it's your property taxes that affect you the most. It's the school districts that your kids go to school that affect you the most. It's the sales taxes in your little areas. Like, those are the things, as your city council members, like, those are the things that truly affect your life. It's like people get. So I was curious how whichever president is elected might affect the state Senate and the state House in those ways.
Sure.
Does it?
Well, it does from a turnout standpoint. First thing I'll tell you is, can we just get a normal cycle here? I would love just to get a normal election cycle.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, last election cycle we had a Supreme Court ruling that threw things in a completely different.
COVID?
Yeah, well, that too. That's even before my time in the legislature. Now you have an assassination attempt with a major party swapping out who their candidate is months before the election. I mean, if we could just get a normal one, that'd be great.
And I would add to that the criminal indictments and,
Sure.
and all of that. To your point, is we sort of have this, like, it'd be nice to have a month. It'd be nice to have a weekend without news, and I think that the public would appreciate that too.
But from a state standpoint, I think there are a few elections to watch. Number one, obviously the House races and how that shakes out, because the balance of the Minnesota legislature in the House is on the ballot. There's also a special election in the state Senate District 45, which the Senate right now is 33-33. That could be a tiebreaker. And then I think Congressional District 2, which is typically a pretty close congressional district, is going to be interesting to watch. And the biggest driver in a national election like this, especially with what's occurring, is going to be turnout. And that has the ability to impact all of those elections and set the course for the state.
Good point.
More than anything. But I think, to your point, education and seeing what's happening in our public schools and trying to fix that's important. The impact on people's budgets, their ability for them to run their small business or be an employee at that small business. These are all things that are trending in a bad direction right now for the people of Minnesota. It behooves all of us to work together on improving them, and that's really what's going to be on the ballot.
Yeah, we talked about the controversy and how people view former President Trump. Let's talk about Walz for a second. He's nominated as a VP for the Democratic ticket. It's so interesting seeing someone come from like state stardom and then quickly blossom on the national stage as someone seemingly different. The people on the left and people nationally were like in awe over how seemingly sincere and respectful and honorable and coach and father and National Guard this guy was. But then again, you have people on the right and from the GOP are like, well, hold on a second. How did he handle certain things while in office? How did he handle the riots? How did he handle COVID? And they disagree with him on that. Do you think Walz will help the ticket and will hurt the Republican ticket?
So I'll start with helping the Democratic ticket, because I do think one of the things I'll just sort of respond to is when you look at polls in Minnesota, people, and this was up until the last month, people think that things are going better and things are on the right track in Minnesota, and they have a different feeling of what's going on nationally. And the reason I think that this helps Walz is I do think that there is a sense that in Minnesota, whether it's investing in kids and the future, whether it's our low unemployment rate, the things that we're doing to protect people's freedoms, there is a sense, and I think that when I talk to folks in other states, that model, that is something that people want in the country. And so I think he can tell that story, in addition to being, I think we have two very authentic, relatable candidates at the top of the ticket. Very different, right? They have different personalities, different backgrounds, but I think they really complement themselves. And again, they're telling a story of not just themselves, but a story of the coalition and what they're building, and an administration that you can build with, as opposed to an administration that will alone fix it.
Yeah, I know the right has had a lot of issues with Walz. What's your take on it? I don't want to stereotype you. I'm just curious what your personal take is.
So I didn't think he was going to be the pick for 2 reasons.
Who did you think it was?
I thought that the Harris campaign would be a little bit more strategic in their pick. I thought Senator Kelly out of Arizona, which is a swing state that they need, would be the pick, or more likely Governor Shapiro out of the great state of Pennsylvania, which has a lot of electoral votes, would be the pick for obvious reasons. Yeah. Now, come to find out, in hindsight, it sounds like maybe both those gentlemen took themselves out of the running prior to, which left Governor Walz as a pretty solid and decent choice. Is it going to be a difference maker as far as electoral count is concerned? Probably not. At least for the state of Minnesota. Yeah. However, that's not to say that Minnesota could go red. We'll see what happens. But what I will say is, I think there were maybe more strategic choices that she could have made had those gentlemen chose to join her ticket. And also, I would say, I think Walz is doing. He's not doing any harm, I don't think, in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. But I will say this. There are certain things that have resurfaced regarding his record, whether they be embellishments, whether they be something that was misstated or misspoken about, that should they continue to be issues, could very well put a hamper on what they're trying to accomplish.
But do you think a white, middle-aged governor from a rural part of the state who was a high school football coach and a middle-class guy who also served in the National Guard, do you think that will pull votes away from people who tend to lean maybe a little bit right?
All the evidence suggests that the vice presidential candidate, whether it's Walz or J.D. Vance, really doesn't have an impact on the race overall. That being said, what I will say is, Governor Walz has won the state of Minnesota 2 times, and he did well in his former congressional district that now votes red pretty consistently. So if you're looking for somebody that is a good campaigner, I think there's probably no doubt that folks would say Tim Walz is pretty good at campaigning.
And I agree. I think that all the research says sort of the goal of a vice president after these conventions, or the nominee, is do no harm, right? Be a good ally. I think that the question is, we haven't talked about J.D. Vance yet, but I think that question of that pick is a question of do no harm, right? I think that there's more conversation about him. I think when you talk about Walz on the ticket, I think he is a candidate who's a good campaigner. He clearly brings an enthusiasm, and whether it's his Nebraska roots, whether it's his first congressional district in Minnesota, I think he has the ability to connect with people. But I tend to agree that people vote for the president. They vote for what they want to see. They vote for the future for the next 4 years, and so I think there will be a choice between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
Yeah, there's no doubt he's having a good time. He's enjoying himself.
Yeah.
He's out there. This is what he lives for.
Yeah.
Being out in front of crowds and being the cheerleader that he likes to be. So he's enjoying himself.
What do you think about Vice President Harris sort of immediately getting the torch passed to her from President Biden via, Biden's not appointment, but his backing, and then the delegates sort of being like, yeah, let's do that, as opposed to a fresh mini primary, which some people had suggested. Do you think it was the right way to come up with the candidate, or the wrong way?
I would just say it was following the rules, right? Like the way that both of our nominees are chosen is by the rules of the party. There wasn't a rule, or there wasn't a
There's no law
process, right? There's
No, but the delegates chose her.
But what I'm saying is if you actually go look at the rules.
It's the way we do it.
It's the way we do it. It's the way that it's set up. The idea of creating a mini primary, actually, I am not sure whether being an election lawyer, knowing what it takes to run an election.
It'd be tough.
But additionally, we would have to create all new rules. And I think what you're seeing is we are not having that conversation. That conversation was not had at the, and this is, my party is many things, but entirely of one voice on anything is not one of them. And to be in a room for 4 days where people really felt like this is the right choice, I think was an indication of the process being the right way.
Do you think it was fair and the right way to put her on the ticket?
It's a Democrat Party. In my opinion, they can choose whatever process they desire to choose.
Yeah.
And I know, you have other people trying to make a bigger deal out of it than it is, in my opinion. But here's what I can tell you. It is absolutely remarkable. It should not be lost on anybody that you had a sitting president who had the nomination locked up, decide to step aside and make way for someone else. Now, as far as the Democrat Party is concerned, I don't think you had a bunch of people jumping up and down saying they wanted to be that nominee necessarily, because the polls a month and a half, 2 months ago were very, very different. And I think you had plenty of great promising would-be Democrat candidates say, I think I'll sit this one out and maybe wait until next cycle to see what happens. And then you add to that the fact that you had all these financial constraints, that nobody would have been able to benefit from the Biden-Harris political fundraising that had occurred other than Biden or Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And they could have gone in and had a convention where they had competition for that spot, but it was pretty clear they all had decided to coalesce behind somebody and move that direction.
Do you think it was honorable for Biden to step aside as a Republican?
I'll give you my personal opinion. I'm not sure some of the things that happened behind the scenes were, but I'm not privy to that information. But I will say this: people years ago, when he first came into office, were saying Biden's not going to be the person to run again. They're going to replace somebody else. And I was the first one to say, when you're the president and you've got another 4 years, of course you're going to be that person to run again and try to continue. But the fact that he was able to be convinced to step aside and make way for someone else, this is coming from a Republican, from a conservative, that is remarkable. That he would decide to take himself out of the mix to give what he thought his party was a better chance. And I think that is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I think it was, there's been a lot of wrangling about sort of how it happened in the end. But I think if you were talking to voters, Democratic voters, 6 months, 8 months, this was actually just, Biden was following and frankly responding to where Democrats and the public was at. And I think if you saw his first day convention speech, it really was a speech, that was remarkable too, right? Because he really gave a speech that was sort of a farewell speech, but also a torch-handing speech, not just to Kamala Harris, but to the next generation and a future focus that I think Democrats are hungry for, but I think the public was hungry for it too.
To be clear, I don't think he would have done that had he not had the debate performance that he did. So was it honorable? Sure. However, was he driven to that circumstance as a result of his debate performance? There's no question. I mean, before that debate, he was, I'm the guy, I'm going to be the one on the ticket. After that debate, when he kind of received some of that pressure, it became pretty clear that he needed to step aside.
All right, I got 2 questions left to wrap up this conversation, which I'm grateful for. I love talking about this stuff, and I love being able to respectfully disagree with people. Like, that's part of the game. It's part of our freedom. It's okay. First, what do you wish Democrats could see past in their stereotypes of Republicans? What do you wish Democrats could see past in their stereotypes of Republicans?
Sure. Well, I'm really hopeful that they do see past a lot of this stuff and that some of it is political rhetoric, because I know for a fact that a lot of folks that would consider themselves to be Republicans or moderates, independents that maybe lean Republican or conservative are phenomenal people. They care about their families, they care about their neighbors, their community, their state. They want to see everybody thrive and succeed, and are often not what they're made out to be when it comes to some of the divisive political rhetoric that you hear pointed at and toward them. And that's true of both sides, don't get me wrong. But they're great people. They're phenomenal people. And if we can get folks across the aisle, and probably many do, to see past some of that and beyond some of that rhetoric and realize we have probably more in common than you might realize. We just need to find ways in which to compromise and strike balance so that we can move things in a better direction holistically.
And the reason I ask this is obviously because the stereotypes are well established, and then social media beats them into your heads thinking that they're real and they're sprawling, but that's not the case with humanity. What do you wish Republicans could see past in their stereotypes of Democrats?
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to agree and sort of take the same framework that Senator Duckworth did, because democracy is not always about disagreeing. It's about believing in people even when you don't agree. And so when we talk about the stereotypes, and I think you're right, made worse in an environment, a social media environment where everyone seems to be sort of yelling in all caps at each other, brandishing people with a bad brush. And I think when we have a political system, and I think both sides are guilty of this, who sort of who traffic in sometimes shorthand or stereotypes, whether it's about people or whether it's about issues, we lose the public, and we lose that conversation that's happening in both of our neighborhoods. You know, that's happening at Little League games, it's happening at corn feeds, it's happening, and you know, when I go out and I talk to our rural Democrats, they look a lot different than urban Democrats and suburban Democrats, but so do Republicans and independents, and frankly, folks with no party at all. And so when I think that and I think we probably agree here, that our political system, our democracy is better served when people are actually in deeper relationship and conversation. Because it's hard to have a stereotype of your neighbor down the street who has a Trump flag or a Biden flag or a Harris-Walz flag now, when you actually know them and they offer to watch your kids or watch your dog. It's harder.
Well, I'll just end with this. It was really nice to see you guys yucking it up and being cordial before we were mic'd up. It's like, oh yeah, we're both in the state legislature, and nice to see you, and congratulations about your pregnant wife. You're like, it's nice to see it. So, State Representative Emma Greenman, State Senator Zach Duckworth, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, and thanks for watching this version of the CARE Conversation. We hope that you can chime in on social media. Tell us what you think. What do you want to hear more of? What do you want to hear less of? And we'll be eager to get that feedback. Take care, everybody.